The massive circular chamber stretched beyond the limits of human vision, its crystalline walls rising into darkness above and descending into phosphorescent depths below. Ambassador Marcus Reed stood on the observation platform, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched thousands of alien delegates take their positions in the amphitheater that dwarfed anything Earth had ever constructed. This was the Galactic Council headquarters, the nerve center of an interstellar government that ruled over 43 star systems and countless worlds. Each delegate pod was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the unique environmental needs of species that had evolved under different suns, in different gravities, breathing different atmospheric mixtures. The Vorthak representatives floated in tanks of methane ammonia solution, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The crystalline beings from Altair Prime sat motionless in pods that hummed with harmonic frequencies that would shatter human eardrums. Massive insectoid creatures from the hive worlds clicked and chittered in chambers filled with the humid air of their tropical homeworlds. Marcus had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, studying the political structures, social hierarchies, and cultural nuances of 43 different civilizations. He had learned 17 different languages and undergone genetic modifications to survive in environments that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. Nothing had prepared him for the sheer scale of what humanity was facing. Impressive, is it not? The voice came from behind him, speaking an accented galactic standard. Marcus turned to see Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Confederation approaching, her blue-scaled form moving with the fluid grace of an aquatic predator. The first time is always overwhelming. When my people were summoned here 2 centuries ago, our lead diplomat fainted from sensory overload. Marcus managed a diplomatic smile. It certainly puts things in perspective. I understand your people's integration process took several decades. Veltar's gill slits fluttered in what Marcus recognized as amusement. Integration. Such a polite word for what actually happens here. Tell me, Ambassador Reed, what has your species been told about today's proceedings? The question carried undertones that made Marcus's diplomatic training kick into high alert. We understand that humanity is being evaluated for membership in the Galactic Council. Our technological capabilities, cultural development, and potential contributions to galactic civilization are being assessed. And if you fail this assessment? Marcus met her gaze steadily. Then we return to Earth and continue our development until we're ready to reapply. Veltar's laugh was like the sound of water cascading over rocks. Oh, my dear human friend, has no one explained to you what happened to the Kepler colony, or the independent mining operations in the Outer Rim, or the 12 other species that were deemed unready for Council membership in the past 50 years? Before Marcus could respond, a deep harmonic tone filled the chamber, causing every delegate to cease their conversations and turn their attention to the central dais. High Chancellor Morden, a being whose species had achieved interstellar travel while Earth was still forming its first complex life forms, rose from his position at the apex of the amphitheater. This council recognizes the representative of the species known as humanity. Chancellor Morden's voice carried through the chamber without amplification, a feat of acoustic engineering that demonstrated the technological superiority of the council's builders. Ambassador Marcus Reed of the planet designation Sol 3, also known as Earth, you stand before the combined authority of 43 star systems. State your species' petition. Marcus stepped forward, acutely aware that every word he spoke would be analyzed by xenobiologists, political scientists, and military strategists representing civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. His next words would determine whether humanity joined the galactic community as equals or faced consequences that his briefings had only hinted at. Honored Chancellor, distinguished representatives, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics. Humanity comes before this council not as supplicants seeking charity, but as a species ready to contribute our unique capabilities to the greater good of galactic civilization. A ripple of interest moved through the assembly. Several delegates leaned forward in their environmental pods, translator matrices working overtime to convey the subtle implications of Marcus's word choice. Chancellor Morden's multiple eyes focused on the human ambassador with laser intensity. Your species makes a bold claim, Ambassador Reed. The Council's preliminary report suggests that humanity has achieved faster than light travel only within the past 50 years. Your longest interstellar voyage prior to this delegation extended barely beyond your immediate stellar neighborhood. Upon what basis do you claim readiness for participation in galactic affairs? Marcus had anticipated this question, but standing before beings whose civilizations measured their histories in geological epochs, the prepared answer seemed suddenly inadequate. He took a measured breath and made a decision that would change the course of human history. With respect, Chancellor, I believe the question itself reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about what humanity brings to the galactic community. You ask what we can contribute based on our technological achievements or the span of our interstellar presence, but those metrics assume that value in galactic civilization is measured solely by age and technological sophistication. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of environmental systems seemed to quiet as thousands of alien minds processed this unprecedented response. Marcus continued, his confidence growing as he saw uncertainty flicker across faces that had expected either submissive gratitude or primitive defiance. Humanity's contribution to galactic civilization lies not in what we have achieved, but in how we achieve it. We are a species that has learned to thrive through cooperation rather than domination, through innovation rather than intimidation, and through voluntary association rather than forced compliance. Ambassador Veltar's gill slits had stopped fluttering entirely. Around the chamber, delegates were consulting with their advisors in hushed, urgent tones. Furthermore, Marcus said, his voice carrying a subtle edge that suggested confidence rather than arrogance. Humanity did not come to this council seeking membership. We came because we were summoned. The distinction is important, because it suggests that this council recognizes something in humanity that extends beyond our current technological capabilities. Chancellor Mordun's massive frame shifted slightly, a movement that in his species indicated either deep interest or preparation for aggression. You speak as though your species has alternatives to council membership. Ambassador Reed, I remind you that independent civilizations face significant challenges in the current galactic environment. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, he felt the fear that had been driving his diplomatic caution begin to transform into something else entirely. Chancellor, with all due respect to this august body and the civilizations it represents, humanity has been studying galactic civilization for longer than you might assume. We have observed how species are integrated into the council structure. We have noted the patterns of resource allocation, territorial assignment, and technological sharing that characterize membership in your organization. He paused, letting his words settle before delivering the statement that would either doom humanity or establish them as a power that demanded recognition as equals. We have also observed the alternatives. The silence that followed was not the quiet of a diplomatic pause. It was the silence of thousands of beings suddenly realizing that they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the species standing before them. Humanity had not come to beg for acceptance into galactic civilization. They had come to negotiate the terms under which they might choose to participate. Chancellor Mordun's voice, when it finally came, carried a tone that suggested the ancient being was reassessing everything he thought he knew about the young species from Sol 3. Perhaps, Ambassador Reed, you would care to elaborate on these alternatives you mention. Marcus Reed straightened his shoulders and prepared to introduce the galaxy to a concept it had never encountered. A species that viewed membership in the Galactic Council not as a privilege to be earned, but as a choice to be made. The crystalline walls of the Galactic Council chamber seemed to pulse with nervous energy as Ambassador Marcus Reed's words hung in the air. Around the vast amphitheater, thousands of delegates from 43 star systems waited to hear what alternatives humanity believed existed to council membership. The silence stretched until Chancellor Mordun's deep voice rumbled through the perfect acoustics. You speak of alternatives as though your species has options. Ambassador Reed, I am curious to understand what a civilization 50 years into interstellar travel believes it can accomplish independently in a galaxy where established powers have maintained order for millennia. Marcus reached into his diplomatic pouch and withdrew a small, crystalline device that immediately caught the attention of several delegates. The object was clearly of human manufacture, but its design incorporated principles that shouldn't have been accessible to such a young civilization. Before I answer that question, Chancellor, I believe it would be helpful for the Council to understand the true scope of humanity's activities during our 50 years of interstellar exploration. He activated the device, and a three-dimensional hologram materialized above the central dais. The image showed the local group of galaxies, with thousands of star systems highlighted in different colors. Blue markers indicated council territories, red showed hostile or unclaimed space, and green represented what appeared to be an extensive network of human outposts and allied settlements. Ambassador Veltar's gill slits flapped rapidly as she studied the display. This cannot be accurate. Our intelligence reports show human presence in only 17 systems, all within 30 light-years of Sol. Marcus nodded respectfully. Your intelligence reports show human government presence in 17 systems, Ambassador Veltar. But humanity has never limited itself to government exploration. While our official diplomatic corps was preparing for eventual contact with galactic civilization, our private citizens were building something quite different. The hologram zoomed in to show detailed views of systems that Council records listed as uninhabited or unexplored. Each green marker revealed bustling trade stations, agricultural colonies, research facilities, and what appeared to be defensive installations of clearly human design. Independent human settlements? Chancellor Morden's voice carried a note of disbelief. Operating without government sanction in unclaimed territories? Not without government knowledge, Chancellor, but certainly without government control. You see, humanity learned something important from studying galactic civilization before making contact. We learned that voluntary cooperation produces stronger and more innovative results than centralized authority. Marcus gestured, and the hologram shifted to show shipping lanes connecting the human settlements. The network was vast, efficient, and completely outside Council monitoring systems. While the Council was observing our official government activities, humanity was conducting what we call the Free Settlement Initiative. Individuals, families, and voluntary communities were establishing themselves throughout the local group, creating an economic and social network based on trade, mutual aid, and shared technological development. The implications struck the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Several species that had joined the Council specifically to gain access to interstellar infrastructure were now staring at evidence that humanity had built their own network from scratch. War Leader. Take Moore of the Brutal Legion stood abruptly in his environmental pod, his massive frame radiating aggression. This is precisely the kind of uncontrolled expansion that the Council exists to prevent. Unclaimed territories exist as buffer zones to maintain galactic stability. Marcus turned to face the War Leader directly, showing no sign of intimidation despite the fact that Thakmore's species had conquered 12 systems before joining the Council. With respect, War Leader, the territories we've settled were truly uninhabited. No sentient species displaced, no existing claims violated. We've actually improved stability by establishing peaceful trading posts in regions that previously attracted pirates and raiders. Impossible, declared Science Premier Kexlin of the Technical Collective. Our surveys indicated those regions lacked the infrastructure necessary to support advanced civilization. They lacked the infrastructure to support centralized civilization, Marcus corrected. Humanity has developed different approaches to space habitation. We don't require massive orbital stations or terraformed worlds to thrive. Our settlements are designed to work with existing environmental conditions rather than reshaping them to match our needs. The hologram displayed detailed views of human colonies that seemed to blend seamlessly with their environments. Asteroid mining operations that left no environmental damage. Agricultural stations that enhanced rather than displaced existing ecosystems. Research facilities that operated on renewable energy sources that Council science had dismissed as insufficient for serious exploration. Chancellor Morden leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying the display with growing concern. Even assuming the accuracy of this information, Ambassador Reed, your dispersed settlements cannot match the resources and protection that Council membership provides. What happens when your independent colonies encounter hostile forces beyond their ability to resist? Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the proceedings began, his expression carried genuine warmth. An excellent question, Chancellor. Perhaps you'd like to ask them directly. The hologram shifted again, and suddenly the chamber was filled with the voices of human colonists from across the local group. A mining foreman from the Kepler Belt spoke about trade relationships with 3 different alien species that had never contacted the Council. A research director from the Vega system described technological exchanges with nomadic civilizations that Council surveys had never detected. An agricultural coordinator from the Centauri region reported on cooperative farming projects with several species that Council records listed as primitive, hunter-gatherers, but it was the last transmission that caused audible gasps throughout the chamber. The speaker was clearly human, but her location was listed as the Phantom Nebula, a region that Council explorers had declared impossible to navigate safely. Ambassador Reed, this is Director Sarah Kim of Deep Range Station. We wanted the Council to know that humanity's expansion into the Phantom Nebula has been proceeding successfully for 12 years now. We've established permanent settlements on 17 worlds and developed peaceful relationships with 4 previously unknown sentient species. Our projections indicate that within 10 years, the Phantom Territories will support a population of over 2 million humans and our allied species. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The Phantom Nebula was legendary among galactic civilizations as an impenetrable barrier that marked the edge of known space. Multiple Council expeditions had failed to establish even temporary bases in the region. Ambassador Veltar's voice was barely above a whisper. How did they overcome the navigation problems? The energy storms in that region destroy conventional shielding systems. Marcus's response was matter of fact. They adapted. Humanity has always excelled at finding solutions that others considered impossible. We don't try to overcome hostile environments through brute force. We study them, understand them, and find ways to work with them rather than against them. Chancellor Moradin's massive frame had grown very still. When he spoke, his voice carried an undertone that suggested he was beginning to grasp the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Ambassador Reed, you're describing a civilization that has achieved in 50 years what typically requires centuries of Council support and guidance, yet you've done so while remaining completely outside our monitoring and assistance systems. This suggests either remarkable luck or capabilities that our initial assessments significantly underestimated. The latter, Chancellor. But more importantly, it suggests that humanity operates according to principles that don't require external authorization or oversight. We've built our interstellar civilization on voluntary cooperation, mutual benefit, and respect for individual choice. These principles have allowed us to achieve rapid expansion while maintaining peaceful relationships with everyone we've encountered. Marcus paused, then delivered the statement that would force the Council to completely reconsider their relationship with the species they had summoned for evaluation, which brings us back to your original question about alternatives to Council membership. Humanity doesn't need Council membership to thrive in galactic civilization, Chancellor. We've already built our own version of galactic civilization. The question isn't whether we're qualified to join your organization. The question is whether your organization is ready to interact with a civilization that considers membership optional rather than essential. The silence that followed Ambassador Marcus Reed's revelation stretched across the Galactic Council chamber like a physical force. Thousands of alien delegates sat motionless in their environmental pods, their various sensory organs, focused on the human representative who had just fundamentally challenged their understanding of how galactic civilization operated. Chancellor Moradin was the first to break the silence, his ancient voice carrying a weight that suggested he was choosing his words with extreme care. Ambassador Reed, you present this council with a situation that has no precedent in recorded galactic history. A species that has achieved significant interstellar expansion while remaining completely outside established monitoring systems represents a potential disruption to the balance of power that has maintained peace for thousands of years. Marcus nodded respectfully. We understand your concern, Chancellor. However, I would suggest that humanity's approach has actually enhanced galactic stability rather than threatening it. Our settlements have established peaceful relationships with multiple species, created new trade networks that benefit everyone involved, and solved several regional problems that Council forces had been unable to address. War Leader Thakmor's massive form shifted aggressively in his environmental pod. You speak of solving problems, human, but your unauthorized expansion violates the fundamental principle that guides Council authority. Order requires oversight. Cooperation requires coordination. What you describe is chaos masquerading as civilization. With respect, War Leader, what I describe is voluntary cooperation masquerading as nothing at all. It simply is what it is. are beings choosing to work together for mutual benefit without requiring permission from external authorities. The war leader's roar of frustration echoed through the chamber, but before he could respond, Science Premier Kexlin of the Technical Collective interjected with clinical precision. The humans' claims require verification. I propose that we dispatch evaluation teams to confirm the existence and nature of these alleged settlements. Until we have independent confirmation, this discussion is based on potentially fabricated evidence. Marcus reached into his diplomatic pouch again and withdrew another device, this one larger and more complex than the holographic projector. Science Premier, I anticipated your request. This is a real-time communication array that will allow you to speak directly with our settlements throughout the local group. You're welcome to verify any claims we've made. He activated the device, and immediately the chamber filled with incoming transmission requests from dozens of human settlements. Each signal carried authentication codes that proved the communications were genuine and current, not pre-recorded presentations. I'll randomly select 3 settlements for direct communication, Marcus announced. Chancellor, would you prefer to choose the locations yourself? Chancellor Morden's expression indicated he was struggling to maintain the formal dignity appropriate to his position while processing information that challenged every assumption about galactic political structure. Very well. Establish contact with your settlement in the Rigel system. Marcus nodded and activated the link. Within seconds, a clear transmission appeared above the central dais, showing a bustling space station orbiting a gas giant that council records indicated was uninhabitable. Ambassador Reed, this is Commander James Walsh of Rigel Station. We're honored to address the Galactic Council directly. How can we assist with your diplomatic mission? Science Premier Kexlin leaned forward in her pod, her multiple eyes studying the transmission for any sign of deception. Commander Walsh, our records indicate that the Rigel system lacks the basic resources necessary to support permanent human habitation. How have you overcome these limitations? Commander Walsh's response was enthusiastic rather than defensive. Science Premier, we'd be happy to demonstrate our solutions. The gas giant you see behind me provides an endless supply of hydrogen and helium isotopes that we process into fusion fuel. The moon system contains mineral deposits that our mining operations extract, using techniques that work with the existing gravitational patterns rather than fighting against them. We've actually improved the system's stability by removing dangerous asteroid debris that was threatening the inner planets. Ambassador Veltar spoke up, her aquatic form moving with obvious agitation. Commander, the Rigel system is within the territorial claims of the Centauri Confederation. Your presence there constitutes an unauthorized occupation of our claimed space. Commander Walsh's expression showed genuine confusion. Ambassador Veltar, our records indicate that the Centauri Confederation formally abandoned their claims to the Rigel system 15 years ago due to the cost of establishing infrastructure there. We purchased mineral rights through the Galactic Commerce Registry using standard legal procedures. We have all the documentation, if you'd like to review it. The revelation that humanity had been operating through official galactic legal channels while remaining outside political oversight sent another wave of shock through the assembled delegates. They had assumed that humanity's activities were unauthorized because they were unmonitored, not because they had found ways to operate legally without requiring political approval. Chancellor Morden's voice carried a note of growing respect mixed with concern. Commander Walsh, your operations appear to be both legal and efficient. However, independence from council oversight raises questions about your settlement's response to potential conflicts or emergencies. How do your scattered communities coordinate defense and mutual aid? Commander Walsh smiled, and his response revealed another layer of humanity's approach that the council had not anticipated. Chancellor, we'd be happy to demonstrate our coordination systems. Computer, please establish contact with the other 17 settlements in our mutual defense network. The holographic display suddenly filled with transmission, windows from human settlements scattered across a region of space, spanning hundreds of light years. Each commander reported on their settlement's status, available resources, and defensive capabilities. What became immediately apparent was that humanity had created a communication and coordination network that operated faster and more efficiently than anything in council databases. This network allows real-time coordination across interstellar distances, Commander Walsh explained. Any settlement facing difficulties can request assistance from others, and we can mobilize resources faster than traditional government bureaucracies. Last month, when the Vega Agricultural Station was threatened by asteroid impacts, 12 other settlements contributed materials and personnel to construct deflection systems within 48 hours. Science premiere. Kexlin's mechanical limbs were moving rapidly as she processed the implications. Impossible. Real-time communication across such distances requires quantum entanglement networks that should be beyond your technological capabilities. Marcus stepped forward with an expression that suggested he was revealing information that humanity had been keeping carefully hidden. Science premiere. Humanity's technological development hasn't followed the same patterns as other species. While we were later to achieve basic interstellar travel, we've excelled in areas that other civilizations considered secondary priorities. The holographic display shifted to show technical specifications that caused several delegates to make sounds of disbelief. Humanity had developed quantum communication systems, environmental adaptation technologies, and resource utilization methods that surpassed anything in council archives. How? Science Premier Kex Lin's question carried a note of scientific fascination that transcended political considerations. These achievements represent centuries of focused research by our most advanced civilizations. Marcus's answer revealed the philosophical foundation that had allowed humanity to achieve what others considered impossible. We don't research technologies to gain advantages over others, Science Premier. We research them to solve problems that prevent beings from living the lives they choose. When survival and cooperation are more important than dominance and control, innovation follows different paths. Chancellor Morden's ancient eyes studied the human ambassador with an expression that suggested he was beginning to understand that humanity represented something genuinely new in galactic civilization. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of a leader who realized that everything he thought he knew about power and authority was about to change. Ambassador Reed, humanity appears to have achieved something that our political scientists believed was theoretically impossible. Functioning interstellar civilization, based on voluntary cooperation rather than centralized authority. This raises fundamental questions about the nature of galactic governance itself. Marcus met the Chancellor's gaze steadily. Indeed it does, Chancellor. The question now is whether the Galactic Council is prepared to engage with a civilization that considers authority legitimate only when it serves voluntary cooperation rather than demanding it. The atmosphere in the Galactic Council chamber had shifted from formal evaluation to something approaching crisis management. Chancellor Morden had called for a brief recess, during which delegates huddled in urgent consultations with their advisors, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds that the chamber's translation systems struggled to process. When the session resumed, Chancellor Morden's demeanor had changed noticeably. The ancient being's posture suggested someone preparing for a conversation that would determine the future of galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Reed, this council has spent the recess period reviewing the implications of humanity's revelations. We find ourselves facing a situation that challenges the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic governance has operated for millennia. Marcus remained standing at attention, but his expression showed that he understood the gravity of what was about to unfold. Chancellor, humanity appreciates the difficulty of this situation. We didn't seek to challenge the Council's authority so much as to demonstrate that alternative approaches to interstellar civilization are not only possible but potentially beneficial for everyone involved. War Leader Thakmore's voice rumbled, with barely controlled aggression. Alternative approaches that undermine the very concept of organized galactic society. Human, your species has essentially created a shadow civilization that operates outside all established protocols. This cannot be permitted to continue. With respect, War Leader, Marcus replied calmly. Humanity hasn't asked for permission. We've simply chosen to organize ourselves according to principles that we believe serve the welfare of all sentient beings. The question isn't whether you permit it to continue, but whether you choose to work with it or against it. The distinction was not lost on the assembled delegates. Several species shifted uncomfortably as they realized that humanity was not negotiating from a position of weakness seeking council approval, but from a position of strength offering council cooperation. Ambassador Veltar spoke up, her aquatic form moving with obvious distress. Ambassador Reed, Surely you understand that cooperation requires common standards, shared protocols, and mutual accountability. Your settlements operate according to human values and human decision-making processes. How can we trust that your actions will remain compatible with galactic stability? Marcus activated his communication device again, and the chamber filled with a new set of transmissions that would fundamentally alter the Council's understanding of humanity's expansion. Ambassador Veltar, I think you'll find that our settlements operate according to much more diverse principles than you assume. Computer, please establish contact with our partner communities in the Outer Rim territories. The holographic display revealed settlements that were clearly not human in origin. Crystalline structures that matched Altarian architecture floated alongside human habitat modules. Aquatic facilities designed for Centaurian physiology operated in harmony with human agricultural stations. Most shocking of all, several settlements appeared to house species that Council records indicated were primitive hunter-gatherers incapable of space travel. What you're seeing, Marcus explained, represents humanity's approach to interstellar cooperation. Rather than requiring other species to adapt to our systems, we've developed technologies and social structures that allow different civilizations to maintain their unique characteristics while working together toward common goals. A new voice joined the transmission, speaking in perfect galactic standard, but with acoustic patterns that identified the speaker as a member of the Resonance Folk, a species the Council had classified as pre-industrial. Honored Council members, this is Harmony Singer Kashara of the Resonance Folk settlements in the Perseus Arm. We greet you from our new homeworlds, which humanity helped us establish after our original star system became unstable. The humans provided transportation and technical assistance, but they allowed us to maintain our traditional social structures and decision-making processes. We have thrived beyond anything we believed possible. Science Premier Kexlin's mechanical limbs clicked rapidly as she processed this information. This is impossible. The Resonance Folk lack the technological infrastructure to survive in space environments. How have you overcome these limitations? Harmony Singer Kashara's response carried the musical quality characteristic of her species. Science Premier, the humans taught us that technology should serve life, not replace it. They helped us develop environmental systems that work with our natural abilities, rather than requiring us to abandon them. Our settlements use bioacoustic resonance to maintain life support systems, and our traditional consensus-building methods have proven highly effective for managing complex interstellar operations. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not simply created their own civilization. They had developed methods for helping other species achieve technological advancement while preserving their cultural integrity. It was an approach that the Council had never attempted, largely because it required abandoning the assumption that advanced civilizations were inherently superior to less developed ones. Chancellor Morden's voice carried a note of growing alarm. Ambassador Reed, how many species have you contacted outside Council oversight? Our records indicate that proper first contact protocols are essential for preventing cultural contamination and ensuring stable integration into galactic society. Marcus's response revealed another layer of humanity's approach that challenged Council assumptions. Chancellor, humanity has encountered 17 species that had never been contacted by Council explorers. In each case, we followed principles of non-interference and voluntary cooperation. We offered assistance only when requested, and we provided only technologies and knowledge that the receiving species specifically wanted to adapt. The holographic display showed detailed records of humanity's first contact procedures. Rather than the elaborate bureaucratic processes that characterized Council protocols, human first contact followed simple principles: respect for autonomy, voluntary exchange of information, and assistance offered without strings attached. But more importantly, Marcus continued, we discovered that several species that the Council had classified as primitive or pre-industrial had actually developed sophisticated technologies that simply operated according to different principles than Council science recognized. The transmission from Harmony Singer Kashara continued, now showing the remarkable bioacoustic technologies that her species had developed. Environmental systems that used sonic resonance to maintain atmospheric balance. Communication networks that operated through harmonic frequencies that could transmit across interstellar distances. Transportation systems that used sound waves to achieve faster-than-light travel, through methods that Council physics had dismissed as impossible. The Council's first contact protocols, Marcus observed, appear to be designed to identify species that think like Council members, rather than to recognize the full spectrum of possible technological development. Humanity's approach has revealed that galactic civilization is far more diverse and innovative than previously understood. War leader Thakmor stood abruptly, his massive frame radiating frustration and growing anger. Enough! This human speaks as though the Council's methods are inferior to their chaotic approach to interstellar relations. The order we have maintained has prevented galactic wars for thousands of years. Marcus turned to face the war leader directly, his expression calm but resolute. War leader, with respect, you've prevented galactic wars by preventing galactic contact. Humanity's experience suggests that species naturally cooperate when they're treated as equals, rather than subjects. The diversity we've encountered, in just 50 years of exploration, indicates that the galaxy contains far more potential allies than the Council's careful protocols have allowed it to discover. Chancellor Mordun realized that the conversation had reached a critical juncture. Humanity had essentially demonstrated that their approach to galactic civilization was not only different from the Council's, but potentially more effective. The question now was whether the Council would adapt to this new reality or attempt to suppress it. Ambassador Reed, the Chancellor said slowly, humanity appears to be offering the Council a choice between cooperation and conflict. I trust you understand the implications of forcing such a choice upon an organization that commands the military resources of 43-star systems. Marcus's response would determine whether humanity's revelation led to a new era of galactic cooperation or to the first interstellar war that involved a species the Council had dramatically underestimated. Ambassador Marcus Reed stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber, surrounded by the combined authority of 43 star systems, facing a threat that would have terrified any previous species to stand where he now stood, yet his expression remained calm, almost serene, as he prepared to respond to Chancellor Mordun's implicit declaration of potential war. Chancellor, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics, I believe there may be a fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of the choice humanity is presenting to this Council. He activated his communication device one final time, and the holographic display filled with an image that caused audible gasps throughout the assembly. The display showed not a star map or a settlement, but a vast conference chamber that dwarfed even the Council's impressive amphitheater. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species sat in harmonious arrangement, their environmental needs met by technologies that seemed to blend seamlessly with the natural beauty of their surroundings. What you're seeing, Marcus explained, is the first Congress of Voluntary Cooperation, which convened 3 days ago in neutral space. The representatives you see include not only the 17 species that humanity has contacted independently, but also delegations from 12 species that are current members of the Galactic Council. The silence that followed was profound. Chancellor Mordun's multiple eyes focused intently on the display, recognizing several of the species that should have been present in the Council chamber at that very moment. Ambassador Reed, the Chancellor's voice carried a dangerous undertone. Are you suggesting that Council member species have been conducting unauthorized diplomatic activities with your organization? Marcus's response revealed the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Chancellor, I'm suggesting that several Council member species have chosen to explore alternatives to the current system of galactic governance. They remain committed to their Council obligations, but they're also interested in participating in cooperative ventures that don't require Council oversight or approval. Ambassador Veltar spoke from her environmental pod, her voice tight with concern. The Centauri Confederation has not authorized any participation in external diplomatic initiatives. If Centauri representatives are present at your Congress, they're acting without government sanction. The holographic display shifted to show a group of Centauri delegates engaged in animated discussion with representatives from species that had never been allowed to interact under Council protocols. When one of the Centauri delegates noticed the transmission, she approached the viewing area and spoke directly to the Council chamber. Ambassador Veltar, this is Trade Coordinator Nixala of the Centauri Commercial Federation. We're participating in the Congress as private citizens exercising our rights to voluntary association. The trade agreements and technological exchanges we're negotiating here operate entirely within existing legal frameworks. No council regulations are being violated. The distinction was crucial. Humanity had not convinced council member species to rebel against their governments. Instead, they had created opportunities for individual, citizens, and private organizations to engage in cooperative ventures that their governments had never explicitly forbidden because they had never imagined them possible. Science Premier. Kexelin's mechanical voice carried notes of fascination and alarm. Ambassador Reed, the legal implications of this approach are staggering. You've essentially created a parallel system of galactic interaction that operates within existing law, but outside existing authority structures. Exactly, Science Premier. Humanity's approach to galactic civilization is based on the principle that beings should be free to cooperate voluntarily without requiring permission from authorities who may not understand or support their goals. The Congress of Voluntary Cooperation provides a forum for such cooperation that complements rather than challenges existing governmental structures. War Leader Thakmor's roar echoed through the chamber. This is rebellion disguised as legalism. You're undermining the authority of legitimate governments by providing their citizens with alternatives to official channels. Marcus turned to face the War Leader with an expression that suggested genuine puzzlement. War Leader, how does providing people with additional opportunities for cooperation undermine legitimate authority? If governments serve their citizens' interests effectively, then those citizens will continue to support them. If they don't, then perhaps the problem lies with the governments rather than with the alternatives. The philosophical challenge struck at the heart of the Council's conception of authority. For millennia, the Council had operated on the assumption that centralized control was necessary to prevent chaos and conflict. Humanity's success suggested that voluntary cooperation might be not only possible, but more effective than forced compliance. Chancellor Morden's voice, when it came, carried the weight of someone who understood that the conversation had moved beyond diplomatic negotiations to fundamental questions about the nature of civilization itself. Ambassador Reed, humanity appears to be proposing a complete transformation of how galactic society operates. You're suggesting that voluntary cooperation can replace centralized authority as the foundation of interstellar civilization. Not replace. Chancellor. Compliment. There will always be situations that require governmental coordination and authority, but there are also vast areas of galactic life that benefit from voluntary cooperation between beings who choose to work together. Humanity's contribution to galactic civilization is the demonstration that these two approaches can coexist and mutually reinforce each other. The holographic display shifted to show the remarkable achievements of the Congress of Voluntary Cooperation. Joint research projects that had solved problems that had puzzled council scientists for centuries. Trade networks that had brought prosperity to previously isolated species. Cultural exchange programs that had fostered understanding between civilizations that had never been allowed to interact. The choice facing this council, Marcus continued, isn't between cooperation and conflict. It's between embracing the expansion of galactic civilization that voluntary cooperation makes possible, or attempting to suppress it in order to maintain the existing monopoly on interstellar coordination. Harmony Singer. Kishara's musical voice joined the transmission from the Congress. Honored council members, the voluntary cooperation that humanity has made possible has allowed our species to achieve dreams we never imagined possible. We have shared our bioacoustic technologies with 17 other species, and they have shared their innovations with us. Together, we have created solutions to problems that none of us could have solved alone. The truth of her words was evident in the display. Species that the Council had classified as primitive were contributing to advanced research projects. Civilizations that had been isolated by distance or incompatible technologies were collaborating on interstellar infrastructure projects. The galaxy revealed by humanity's approach was far richer, more diverse, and more innovative than the one governed by council protocols. Chancellor Morden stood slowly, his ancient frame moving with the deliberate grace of someone making a decision that would echo through galactic history. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of his office, but also a note of something that might have been hope. Ambassador Reed, the Galactic Council will need time to consider the implications of what you've presented to us today. However, I believe I speak for many when I say that humanity's achievements demand recognition and respect, even if they challenge our traditional approaches to galactic governance. Marcus bowed respectfully. Chancellor, humanity looks forward to whatever form of cooperation the Council believes will best serve the interests of all sentient beings. We have never sought to replace the Council's authority, only to demonstrate that alternatives exist for those who choose to explore them. As the session concluded and delegates began departing for urgent consultations with their governments, the chamber fell into a contemplative silence. Humanity had not conquered the Galactic Council through force or threatened it through rebellion. Instead, they had quietly demonstrated that galactic civilization could expand beyond the boundaries that authority had previously imposed. The age of voluntary cooperation had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the months that followed, the Congress of Voluntary Cooperation would grow to include representatives from over 300 species, many of whom had never been contacted by Council explorers. The Council itself would evolve to embrace new forms of governance that combined centralized coordination with voluntary cooperation. And humanity would take their place not as rulers of galactic civilization, but as the species that had shown the galaxy how to grow beyond the limitations of authority into the unlimited possibilities of choice.